Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that'll shake your mindset and break your limits. If you don't think rich, you'll never speak rich. And if you don't speak rich, you'll never live rich. The battle isn't outside of you. It's not in the economy. It's not in the government. It's not in your job or your bank account. The battle is in your mind. The battlefield is your belief system. You don't need a new income. You need a new instruction of imagination. Your thoughts are the blueprint of your wealth. Before anything shows up in your life physically, it first has to be formed spiritually and mentally. Nothing in your external world can change until something in your internal world shifts. That's why the battlefield is the mind. The wealth you're waiting for isn't delayed because of lack of money. It's delayed because your mind is still running on an old pattern that's not designed to receive what God is trying to give you. You've been trained your whole life to think a certain way. Think small, think average, think safe. They think survival. So now when someone tells you to think rich, you resist it. You spiritualize poverty. You justify struggle. You call it humility. But God never told you to think broke. He told you to renew your mind. They see you can't build a rich life with a poor mindset. You can't expect divine provision while thinking in earthly limitation. Look around you. Everything that exists came from a thought. That phone in your hand, a thought. The car you drive, a thought. The clothes you wear, a thought. And if the physical things in life come from thoughts, then what does that say about the condition of your thinking? If your thoughts are broken, your life will be broken. If your thoughts are cluttered, your life will be chaotic. But if your thoughts are aligned, focused, and elevated, then wealth becomes a byproduct, not a battle. Wealth doesn't start with money. It starts with a renewed mind. A rich mindset is a mind that's aware of divine opportunity, understands kingdom authority, and expects overflow because it's aligned with purpose. But most people are not thinking rich, they're thinking reactive. They're reacting to bills, reacting to debt, to fear, reacting to pressure. And as long as you live in a reactionary mindset, you'll always be playing defense with your destiny. You've got to start thinking from abundance, not scarcity. That doesn't mean you ignore your current circumstances. It means you don't let them dictate the size of your imagination. Scarcity says, I'll never have enough. Abundance says, there's more than enough, and it's on the way. Scarcity makes you compete. Abundance makes you create. Scarcity makes you hoard. Abundance teaches you to sow. When you think rich, you start to perceive problems differently. Poor thinking looks at a problem and sees pain. Rich thinking looks at a problem and sees potential. Poor thinking says, this is too hard. Rich thinking says, this is a seed for my next level. Because when your mind is trained to find opportunity, you stop being intimidated by opposition. Every wealthy person you admire had to win war in their mind before they ever won the battle in their bank account. They had to break free from limited programming. They had to fight through generational poverty thinking. They had to overcome environments where struggle was normal and excellence was optional. And guess what? You're no different. You were created with the same power to think, to choose, and to renew your mind. But here's the challenge, egg. Thinking rich is not automatic. You don't wake up one day with a wealth mindset. You have to intentionally program your mind daily. What are you feeding your mind? Are you consuming fear-based news, gossip, and negativity? Or are you feeding your mind with vision, wisdom, and truth? You can't think rich while scrolling poverty. You can't meditate on confusion and expect clarity. Your dominant thoughts become your decisions, and your decisions create the results you see. If you believe money is evil, you'll subconsciously sabotage every opportunity to receive it. If you believe success is for other people, you'll find ways to stay stuck so you don't outgrow your circle. But if you believe wealth is a tool for impact and legacy, your thoughts will start creating strategies instead of excuses. You have to get to the place where rich thinking becomes your default, not your exception. That means when a problem shows up, your mind goes into innovation mode, not panic mode. That means you wake up expecting doors to open, expecting favor to find you, expecting resources to flow, because your thoughts are anchored in who God says you are, not what your past tried to label you. The enemy doesn't fear your bank account. He fears your mind catching a revelation, because once your mind gets free, your life has no choice but to follow. Once your thoughts rise above survival, your actions into stewardship, you stop wasting time playing small. You start planning like an owner, speaking like a leader, and moving like a king. There's a reason the word says to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, not your income, not your location, not your network, your mind. Because that's where transformation begins. When your thoughts change, when your habits, your results change. But most people want the fruit of wealth without changing the root of their thinking. And let's be real, some of you don't need more money, you need more clarity, you need more discipline, you need more vision, because the money will come when your mind can manage it. The God is not withholding blessings, He's waiting for your thoughts to be ready to receive. You wouldn't hand a mansion to someone who only knows how to manage a tent. They see the strength of so why would God give millions to someone whose thoughts can't even handle hundreds? So ask yourself, is your mind rich enough to handle what you're praying for? Are your thoughts aligned with what you say you believe? Or are you thinking in reverse, sabotaging your own increase with small, fearful, limited ideas? You can't speak what you haven't first conceived. That's why so many people speak lack, defeat, struggle, and confusion, because that's all they've conceived in their inner world. If your mind is full of fear, your mouth will be full of doubt. If your mind is full of lack, your words will echo limitation. You're not going to speak rich if you've never dared to think rich. Your mouth only reveals what your heart has rehearsed. People try to fake it with fancy words and affirmations they don't even believe, but your words will always align with your true belief system. That's why before your words can shift your life, your thoughts must first shift your spirit. You can't expect your language to change if you're inner broken. You can say, I'm well day long, but if you still see yourself as someone undeserving, someone small, someone who always fails, then your words have no power. They're just noise. It's not about repeating affirmations like magic spells. It's about building a foundation in your mind so that your words come from faith, not fear. Because when your thoughts align with truth, your words become weapons. They create, they call forth, they establish things in the unseen realm. But when your thoughts are clouded by doubt, your words lose their authority. This is why transformation starts on the inside. Until you allow yourself to imagine more, dream bigger, and embrace divine abundance, your words will keep leaking the same old patterns. You can't speak until rich you've accepted that wealth is not just possible. It's your assigned inheritance. You can't speak confidently about success if you're still wrestling with shame over your past. You can't speak with faith if you've never trained to mind that the favor of God is not a lottery ticket, it's a covenant. If your internal image of yourself is damaged, your language will reflect that damage. They see the strength. You'll talk about what you've lost more than what you're building. You'll talk about what others have that you don't. You'll compare instead of create. You'll complain instead of command. You'll use words to explain your pain instead of words to shape your promise. That's why people stay stuck, not because they don't have access, but because their words keep reinforcing a false identity. And that false identity was born in a place of broken thinking. You want to change your life. Start by changing how you see yourself in your mind, because when you change the picture on the inside, your words start painting a different picture on the outside. When you see yourself as blessed, favored, equipped, and chosen, you begin to speak with authority. You no longer speak like someone begging for breakthrough. You speak like someone who knows breakthrough lives on the inside of you. Too many people are trying to fix their words without fixing their mindset. They think if they just talk positive, things will change. But if your positive talk is built on negative thinking, it's fragile, it's weak, it crumbles under pressure. Real transformation happens when your mind and your mouth are in alignment. The strength of them, when your thoughts are anchored in truth and your words flow from that truth, that's when your speech becomes powerful. That's when you speak things that heaven agrees with. That's when you command your atmosphere instead of reacting to it. Your words are the echo of your belief system. You can't speak with boldness if your thoughts are still apologizing for who you are. If you still think small, your speech will be small. If you still think like a servant, your speech won't carry the sound of a son or daughter. You'll keep asking for crumbs instead of commanding tables. You'll keep speaking from desperation instead of declaration. And that's what separates those who walk in dominion from those who walk in denial. One has trained their thoughts to believe in divine authority. The other still sees life as something happening to them instead of something they were created to govern. Before you can speak rich, you've got to train your mind to think beyond your current condition. You've got to stop letting your environment dictate your expression. You've got to stop waiting for circumstances to improve before you speak what God already said. Speaking rich doesn't come from seeing wealth in your account. It comes from seeing wealth in your identity. It's the result of knowing who you are and whose you are. It's the overflow of a mind that is no longer shackled by fear or programmed by lack. If you want to speak with power, you've got to meditate on the right things. What are you feeding your mind every day? What conversations are shaping your thought life? What environments are influencing your internal dialogue? Because the moment you start conceiving abundance in your mind, your mouth will begin to birth it in your life. But if your mind is full of scarcity, your words will birth more struggle. Not because God didn't bless you, but because you're still speaking from the basement when he called you to live from the rooftop. They see the strength of it. You can't speak rich. Your mind is still echoing the voices of those who told you that you're not enough. You've got to silence those voices with new truths. You've got to reprogram your internal script. When your thoughts are upgraded, your words will be upgraded. And when your words are upgraded, the atmosphere around you will shift. Doors will respond to your declaration. People will be drawn to your confidence. Opportunities will be attracted to your clarity, not because you manipulated something, but because your words are now aligned with your divine purpose. You don't need to fake it. You need to form it. First in your thoughts, then in your words. Because what you haven't conceived in the womb of your mind, you will never give birth to through the mouth of your spirit. Speaking rich isn't about arrogance. It's about agreement. Agreement with heaven's design for your life. Agreement with the abundance already assigned to your name. Agreement with the truth that you were never created to live small. So stop trying to speak a life you haven't yet believed. Start transforming the way you think, and your words will naturally rise to the level of your vision. Your words create the atmosphere for prosperity. Every time you open your mouth, you are either building or breaking, constructing or cursing, releasing faith or reinforcing fear. Words are not just sounds or syllables. They are containers of power, tools of creation, and blueprints for manifestation. What you speak is what you shape. What you declare is what you invite. What you repeatedly say is what you eventually see. That's why people can work hard for years and still stay broke, because their words are canceling their efforts. Their mouth is working against their mission. There are people who tithe, who give, who hustle, who sacrifice, but they still speak doubt, limitation, fear, and frustration. They complain about the economy. They rehearse their failures. They speak negatively about money, wealth, and success, and then wonder why increase keeps escaping them. They are speaking curses over their own harvest without even realizing it. You can't expect a rich life to grow in a soil that's been poisoned by your own confession. Your words don't just describe your life, they design it. You're not just talking, you are prophesying it. Every sentence is a seed. Every phrase is planting something into your future. If you keep saying you're broke, overwhelmed, or unlucky, are watering the weeds, not the harvest. The atmosphere you live in is not shaped by what happens to you. It's shaped by what comes out of you. You could be in a tough season, but your words can create a winning climate. You could be surrounded by lack, but your mouth can invite overflow. Because when you speak what God says, not what you see, you begin to align your surroundings with His promises. Most people wait until they see the blessing before they speak it. But those who walk in favor don't wait, they create. They speak the outcome before the outcome appears. They speak wealth while they're still in debt. They speak peace while chaos surrounds them, because they understand that word just reactions. They are activators. The atmosphere of your life is either being filled with faith or flooded with fear. And the deciding factor is your mouth. Your speech determines your spirit. Your vocabulary shapes your vision. There are people who can't step into wealth because their words have built a ceiling over their own head. They see the strength of it. They've spoken limits for so long. They've become the prison guards of their own potential. You'll hear them say things like, money doesn't grow on trees, or that's just too expensive for someone like me, or I guess I'm not one of those lucky people who make it. They don't realize that every word is a command to their future. They're giving their destiny instructions, and those instructions are telling it to stay small, stay stuck, and stay silent. You can't live rich while speaking poor. You can't walk in purpose while speaking confusion. You can't expect abundance while agreeing with insufficiency. Your language must match your legacy. If God called you to be the head and not the tail, then your words should reflect that. You don't talk like a victim. You talk like a victor. You don't repeat what the world says. You release what the world said, because the atmosphere doesn't respond to emotion. It responds to authority, and authority flows through language. When a king speaks, things shift. When someone in covenant speaks, things move. When your mouth aligns with heaven, the earth responds. Your life right now is a reflection of the atmosphere you've been creating with your tongue. If you want to change the environment around you, start by changing the language within you. Stop saying what you don't want and start declaring what you do want. Stop repeating your history and start rehearsing your destiny. Every time you speak life, you invite growth. Every time you speak truth, you create order. Every time you speak abundance, you stir favor. Even when you don't feel it, you must say it. Because your words aren't just for expressing feelings, they're for establishing foundations. Many people speak based on their emotions instead of their expectations. They speak from pain instead of promise. They let their temporary situation control their permanent speech. That's why nothing changes. They're trying to build a future while cursing the present. They don't realize that words have memory. Words have assignment. Words go out and return with results. So when you just speak fear, you don't create an environment that confirms it. When you speak defeat, you give energy to every reason why you shouldn't succeed. But when you speak with intention, when you speak with power, you give your atmosphere new instructions. Prosperity isn't just about what you earn, it's about what you expect. And expectations are revealed in your language. If you really believe increase is coming, your words will sound different. You'll speak preparation. You'll say things like, I'm making room for overflow. You'll declare, this is the season where doors open. You'll speak like someone who knows that wealth is drawn to wisdom and favor follows faith-filled speech. Because when your words are full of truth, they carry creative energy. They break delay. They destroy doubt. They push back fear. They invite divine acceleration. The reason the enemy tries to keep your mouth silent or full of negativity is because he knows that your speech carries supernatural power. He doesn't want you to realize that when you speak, you legislate. He wants you to gossip instead of decree. He wants you to whine instead of worship. He wants you to describe problems instead of declaring promises. Because as long as you're talking about how bad things are, you won't speak about how blessed you're becoming. But the moment you shift your words, the moment you take control of your confession, the atmosphere begins to obey your voice. The winds begin to shift. The resistance begins to break. The heavens begin to open and everything that was stagnant begins to move because words shape worlds. Words attract wealth. Words carry weight. And your next level is waiting for the sound of your faith to call it forth. The poverty is a pattern, not a punishment. It's not a curse that randomly falls on certain people. And it's not a divine test meant to keep you humble. It is a learned way of thinking, believing, and behaving that repeats itself until someone stands up and breaks it. Poverty is not just about money. It's about mindsets, habits, decisions, and cycles that have been passed down and adopted as normal. Most people who live in lack aren't there because they're lazy or because God is withholding something. They're there because they've been trained by environments, experiences, and expectations to operate on a system that sustains struggle. You can be born into poverty, but you don't have to die in it. Just because it's your starting point doesn't mean it's your ending place. The problem is when people take on poverty as an identity instead of like a temporary condition. When you believe that struggle is part of your DNA, you stop reaching for something higher. You normalize not having enough. You adjust to low expectations. You start talking like it, walking like it, and defending it. It becomes familiar, and familiarity can be dangerous when it convinces you to settle. The people who live in poverty for a long time eventually start to protect the very thing that's been robbing them. Poverty starts with a thought, becomes a belief, and then grows into a lifestyle. If you constantly think that money is hard to get, that wealth is for other people, that success is suspicious, or that increase is dangerous, then you will never build anything bigger than your fears. People sabotage opportunity not because they're not smart, but because their subconscious has been programmed to reject what looks unfamiliar. So when abundance shows up, they panic. When wealth knocks on the door, they don't answer. They see the strength that they don't want it, but because their system doesn't know what to do with it, that's what happens when a poverty pattern has been running unchecked in the background. Breaking a poverty pattern requires more than income. It requires insight. You can give a person more money, but if their mindset hasn't changed, they'll find a way to lose it, spend it, or avoid it. That's why some people win the lottery and go bankrupt. That's why others make six figures and are still stressed. It's not the money that determines wealth. It's the pattern behind how they think about money, how they manage it, and how they believe they deserve it. Patterns are powerful because they are often invisible. They operate under the surface, but they shape everything on top. You can't just pray over poverty and expect it to disappear if you're still practicing the behaviors that keep it alive. Most poverty patterns are generational. You saw them growing up. You heard phrases like, "We can't afford that. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are greedy. We just need to survive." And those phrases turned into belief systems. They were planted in your heart and they grew roots. And now, even though you want more, those roots are choking the seed of prosperity that God put in you. You've been trying to build a mansion on the foundation of survival. You've been trying to build wealth on top of a system that's built for just getting by. That system has to be torn down and rebuilt if you want to see lasting change. There are people who were never taught how to think strategically, how to multiply resources, or how to steward increase because the people before them never had access to that knowledge. It's not about shame. It's about awareness. You can't break a pattern you refuse to acknowledge. You have to be honest about what you inherited mentally and spiritually, what was modeled for you, what was normalized, what was repeated over and over until it became truth in your mind. Once you identify the pattern, you can replace it with a new one, but not before. You have to expose the lie before you can embrace the truth. Poverty patterns show up in how people manage time, money, energy, relationships, and opportunities. They show up in procrastination, fear of failure, fear of success, scarcity mentality, and self-sabotage. They show up in excuses disguised as wisdom, in playing small while calling it humility, in staying quiet while calling it respect. They show up in living paycheck to paycheck while believing that this is just how life is supposed to be. But life was never meant to be lived in cycles of lack. You were created to multiply, not maintain. You were called to increase. They see the strength survive. But you can't walk in that calling if your patterns are rooted in fear and false identity. You don't rise above the level of your desire. You rise above the level of your discipline. And discipline begins with disrupting patterns. If you've always done life one way and that way has kept you limited, then it's time to challenge the system, not with emotion, but with intentionality. You rewrite patterns by choosing new thoughts, taking new actions, and repeating new behaviors until the old ones lose their power. It's not magic. It's mastery. Mastery of your mindset, mastery of your language, mastery of your habits, mastery of your decisions. Because poverty isn't just a condition. It's a result of repeated decisions made inside a broken belief system. You were not created to inherit cycles of lack. You were created to shift legacies, to create overflow, and to change the story for those who come after you. But that doesn't happen automatically. It happens when you decide that the old way stops with you. When you choose to live differently, think differently, speak differently, and build differently, even when it feels uncomfortable, because disruption is uncomfortable. Breaking patterns is uncomfortable. But comfort is what built the cage. Discomfort is what builds the door. Every time you choose to act differently than the poverty pattern you came from, you're stepping into a new future. Every time you reject a lie about money, worth, or identity, you are shifting the blueprint for your family line. Every time you speak where others spoke lack, you are becoming the architect of a new legacy. Patterns are powerful, but purpose is stronger. And when you understand that your life is a seed for something bigger than you, you'll stop protecting the old and start planning for the new. Faith-filled language attracts favor and finances. The words you speak are not just sounds you make, they are signals you send out into the atmosphere. Every word carries a vibration. Every vibration carries a message. When you speak in fear, you repel the very thing you desire. But when you speak in faith, you magnetize the resources, relationships, and results that are aligned with your assignment. The world responds to language, but heaven responds to faith. And when faith shows up in your mouth, doors begin to open that effort alone could never unlock. You cannot speak defeat and expect victory. You cannot speak struggle and expect success. You cannot speak fear and expect to walk in freedom. If you are constantly speaking from your circumstance instead of your covenant, your mouth is working against your mission. People don't realize how powerful their words are. They say things like, I can't afford that. I'm always broke. Nothing ever works out for me. And they say it casually like it means nothing. But those words are planting something. And whatever you plant, you give permission to grow. Words are seeds and the heart is soil. When you speak with fear, you plant doubt in your own spirit. But when you speak with faith, you activate divine laws that are waiting for your cooperation. The language of faith is not just about positivity. It's not just saying nice things and hoping for the best. It is rooted in belief, anchored in truth, and released with boldness. Faith speaks the end from the beginning. Faith calls things that are not as though they were. Faith doesn't wait for confirmation in the natural. It creates confirmation by speaking what heaven has already established. When you speak with faith, you come into agreement with God's promises, and when your agreement is aligned with divine truth, favor begins to follow your voice. Favor is not random. It is not based on luck or chance. Favor responds to faith. When your mouth speaks what your heart believes, and your heart what God has said, you begin to attract supernatural acceleration. What others struggle to receive, you begin to receive with ease. Not because you're special, but because your language is in alignment with the principles of increase. There is a language that opens doors. There is a tone that shifts atmospheres. There is a vocabulary that tells the invisible realm are ready to receive. And that language is not rooted in anxiety. It's not rooted in confusion. It's rooted in unshakable belief that what you speak by faith, you will see by grace. People don't just fail because of poor choices. They fail as a poor confession. Speak failure before they ever try. They speak doubt before they ever plan. They speak defeat before they ever step. And they don't even realize it's happening. It's become normal to expect the worst, to rehearse limitations, to anticipate rejection. But when you speak with faith, you are not preparing for rejection. You are preparing for reception. You are creating space for favor to flow. You are saying with your mouth that what God said is true, and you are ready for it to manifest. Speaking with faith doesn't mean you ignore facts. It means you speak a higher truth. You might be facing lack, but faith says provision is coming. You might be in debt, but faith says deliverance is near. You might be waiting, but faith says the answer is already on the way. Faith doesn't deny reality. It declares authority over it. It takes dominion with words. It speaks boldly, not because of arrogance, but because of assurance. When your confidence is in what God said, your words carry weight. They shift the room. They break resistance. They attract the resources and relationships necessary to fulfill your mission. Your finances are connected to your faith, and your faith is expressed through your language. If you want to change your financial future, listen to how you talk about money. Are you speaking with fear or with expectation? Are you speaking as a steward or as a struggler? Are you speaking like someone who is barely getting by, or someone who understands that wealth is an assignment? You cannot steward increase with a vocabulary of lack. You cannot build legacy with a language of limitation. Your mouth must match your mission. There is a rhythm to faith-filled language. It sounds different. It's not reactive, it's proactive. It doesn't echo the world, it declares the world. It doesn't retreat in difficulty. It rises in authority. The people who speak with faith don't wait for the storm to pass. They speak the storm. They don't wait for the door to open. They declare the door open. They don't wait for confirmation from others. They walk with confirmation from within. That inner confirmation becomes outward boldness. And that boldness, the force that draws finances and favor into their lives. You are always attracting something with your words. You're either attracting opportunity or repelling it. You're either attracting abundance or reinforcing scarcity. The atmosphere around you is always responding to the atmosphere within you. And that inner atmosphere is revealed through your language. If you want to shift what's coming to you, start by shifting what's coming out of you. Stop speaking like a victim. Stop using language that keeps you small. Stop rehearsing stories that keep you limited. Start speaking the outcome you believe for, not the circumstance you're stuck in. Speak favor, not frustration. Speak increase, not insufficiency. Speak acceleration, not delay. When your words are full of faith, they begin to move what your hands haven't even touched yet. They begin to clear paths, open doors, release strategies, attract people, and shift timing. The things that were locked begin to unlock. The things that were stuck begin to move. Not because you forced it, because you spoke it. Your speech becomes your strategy. Your mouth becomes your weapon, and your voice becomes the invitation for everything God has already assigned to your name to find its way to you. Obedience unlocks overflow. Most people are waiting for increase before they obey, but the truth is God waits for obedience before he releases overflow. In the kingdom, obedience is not optional. It is the activation code for every promise. You don't get to skip instructions and expect divine provision. You don't get to rewrite the assignment and still qualify for the announcing. When God gives you a direction, it is not a suggestion. It is a strategy. And when you follow his strategy, even when it doesn't make sense, you tap into resources that logic could never unlock. The problem is we've been trained to trust what we see instead of what we hear. But in the kingdom, we walk by faith, not by sight. That means your eyes will often lie to you, but the word never will. Your obedience is proof that you trust the word more than your worry, the instruction more than your insecurity, the promise more than your problem. Some people pray for open doors, but ignore open instructions. They ask God to bless their business, bless their finances, their ideas. But when God tells them to do something uncomfortable, they hesitate. They want overflow. They see the strength of, but on obedience. They want abundance, but they don't want alignment. They want results, but they resist responsibility. And that's why they remain stuck. Because in the kingdom, the oil flows in the direction of obedience. Favor follows instruction. Prosperity follows positioning. You cannot walk in rebellion and expect divine reward. God is not obligated to bless what you build in disobedience. The overflow is not random. It's a result. They see the strength of it. It's the fruit of faithful obedience, even when it doesn't feel convenient. Obedience doesn't always look powerful. Often looks like humility. It looks like surrender. It looks like doing the simple thing God told you to do, even when it doesn't seem significant. When the man was told to dip in the Jordan River 7 times, he almost missed his miracle because the instruction looked too small. But what seems small to man is strategic to God. That act of obedience unlocked a complete healing. Sometimes the overflow you're praying for is being held up, not by the enemy, but by your own hesitation to obey. You're waiting for confirmation, but God is waiting for your cooperation. They see the strength of you're waiting for clarity, but God is waiting for commit for a sign, but is waiting for your step. Obedience is not about how you feel. It's about how you move. They see the strength of it's not about your comforting. When God tells you to move, he's not asking for your opinion. He's checking your posture. Are you willing to trust him even when it doesn't make sense? Are you willing to give even when it feels like you don't have enough? Are you willing to forgive even when your emotions want revenge? Obedience is what separates those who talk kingdom from those who walk in kingdom. It's what distinguishes the hearers from the doers, because the blessing is not in the hearing, it's in the doing. The overflow is not promised to the passive, it's reserved for the obedient. Many people think overflow is just about money, but that's too small. Overflow is divine surplus. It's having more than enough grace, more than enough wisdom, more than enough opportunity, more than enough peace, more than enough joy, more than enough influence. But God will never give you more than you're willing to manage. And management begins with movement. You have to move when he speaks. You have to shift when he instructs. You have to release when he says, let go. The rich young ruler missed his overflow not because he was evil, but because he wasn't obedient. He held on to what God told him to release, and in doing so, forfeited what God was trying to multiply. Sometimes the obedience God asks for doesn't even seem connected to the blessing you're praying for. He tells you to forgive, and you're asking for finances. He tells you to fast, and you're praying for a breakthrough. They see the strength of it. He tells you to serve someone else's vision, and you're waiting on your own vision to come to pass. But what if the very thing you're asking for is locked behind the door of that instruction? What if the overflow is waiting on the other side of the obedience you've been avoiding? God is not random. His instructions are always strategic. He doesn't waste commands. Every directive is designed to bring you into alignment with destiny, and until you obey, you delay. Obedience always requires sacrifice. It costs you something, your pride, it costs your timing, it costs your comfort zone. But the return is always greater than the release. When Abram obeyed and laid Isaac on altar, he unlocked generational blessing. When Peter obeyed and let down the nets again after a fruitless night, he experienced supernatural overflow. When the widow obeyed and gave Elijah her last bit of oil and flour, her house never lacked again. In each of these cases, the overflow didn't come first, the obedience did, and the same is true for you. You want the overflow. Then you must obey before you understand, move before you have all the answers, trust before you have all the resources. God doesn't need your plan. He needs your permission, and he gets that permission through your obedience. He needs your yes. He needs your agreement, not someday, now. Because when you obey immediately, you position yourself for sudden favor, sudden increase, sudden opportunities. Heaven does not respond to delay. It responds to decision. And decision is by action. You prove your faith by what you do, not just what you say. You prove your trust in God by your obedience to his voice. The moment you stop negotiating with the instruction and start obeying with intention, you trigger overflow, not just for you, but for everyone connected to you. Because kingdom obedience is never just personal. It's generational. Your yes is someone else's breakthrough. Your obedience is someone else's open door. Your surrender is someone else's deliverance. God cannot bless who you pretend to be. He can only bless who you truly are. In the kingdom, authenticity is currency. Pretending might impress people, but it never moves heaven. Too many people are wearing masks, hiding their true selves behind roles, titles, achievements, and appearances, trying to win approval from people while missing alignment with God. They put on a show in public but feel empty in private. They speak like they have faith but live like they're afraid. And while others may be fooled by your image, God only responds to your identity. You can't fake your way into favor. You can't perform your way into purpose. God is not looking for your perfection. He's waiting on your permission to bless the real you. The danger of pretending is that you start to believe your own act. You start shaping your prayers around your image instead of your truth. You start chasing blessings for the version of you that doesn't even exist. And then you wonder why things aren't working, why heaven feels silent, why the door didn't open. It's because God won't bless your performance. He blesses your posture. He responds to truth. He responds to brokenness. He responds to humility. The word says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. As long as you're pretending, you're operating in pride. You're trying to cover up what God wants to clean up. They see the strength of you're trying to impress others while ignoring the one who called you. God doesn't need you to be impressive. He needs you to be honest. He doesn't need you to look perfect. He needs you to be transparent. When Jacob finally stopped pretending, when he stopped trying to be Esau and came to God as himself, that's when God blessed him. That's when he became Israel, not when he was wearing the costume of someone else. Not when he was trying to manipulate the blessing. It was when he got real. That's the lesson. You don't get transformed by hiding. You get transformed by exposing, by surrendering, by laying the real you on the altar and saying, God, here I am, flawed, broken, unscared, but available. That's what heaven responds to. So many people want God to bless their business, their relationships, their ministry, but they're afraid to show up as themselves. They're so focused on being like that they forget to be aligned. They adapt their personality to please the room, but forget that only authenticity carries oil. The announcing doesn't flow through masks. It flows through honesty. God didn't call the version of you created for Instagram. He called the real you, the one who cries at night, the one who questions sometimes, the one who's been through storms but still gets up. That's who he wants to bless. They see that's who he wants to announce. But you've got to give him access. You've got to drop the act. You've got to remove the filters and say, God, bless me as I am, not as I pretend to be. Even in the church, we've made pretending look spiritual. We shout, we clap when we're confused. We quote scriptures while secretly doubting. But God can't heal what you hide. He can't deliver what you deny. You've got to be willing to say, Lord, I believe, help my unbeliefness. That's not it's wisdom, maturity. That's how healing starts, how restoration begins. Pretending delays the process. They see the strength of the honesty accelerates it. The quicker you get real, the quicker you get free. And the quicker you get free, the quicker you get blessed. People may love your image, but God wants your identity. He didn't call you to be a copy. He called you to be a carrier of glory, of wisdom, of revelation, of truth. But you can't carry what you refuse to confront. You can't walk in purpose while hiding in performance. You can't unlock overflow while locked in insecurity. Your authenticity is your access point. When David stood before Goliath, he didn't wear Saul's armor. He didn't pretend to be a soldier. He showed up as a shepherd with a sling, with some stones, and with unshakable faith. And that's what God blessed. That's what God used. Not a clone, not a performance. The real thing, when you come to God as you are, you invite heaven into your process. You allow grace to meet you in your truth. You give the Holy Spirit something real to work with, because transformation starts with truth. The truth of who you are, the truth of where you've been, the truth of what you struggle with. God doesn't need your church language. He needs your heart. He doesn't need your rehearsed prayers. He needs your raw surrender. It's not the fancy words that move heaven. It's the honest ones, the whispered ones, the desperate ones. The ones see the strength of it. The ones that sound like, Lord, I don't know what to do, but I trust you anyway. You don't need to fix yourself before you come to God. You don't need to clean yourself up before he can bless you. That's not how it works in the kingdom. He doesn't qualify. He qualifies the called. He doesn't wait for perfection. He works with availability. But you can't be available if you're too busy pretending. You can't be healed if you're too busy hiding. You can't walk in destiny if you're too busy acting. The blessing is waiting on the real you to show up, not the version you curated, not the character you created. The original, the authentic, the one God formed in the womb. That's who the blessing is assigned to. That's who the overflow is looking for. That's who heaven is waiting on. They see the strength of the fruit. You can't fake gifts. You can fake talent. You can even fake a platform, but you cannot fake fruit. Fruit is the result of consistent roots. It's the evidence of a real connection to the source. Many people are chasing elevation without cultivation. They want success without surrender. They want results without relationship. But in the kingdom, fruit is the proof that your life is truly aligned with God. Jesus said, by their fruits you will know them, not by their followers, not by their charisma, not by their appearance, by their fruits. That means the real measure of a life is not how it looks, but what it produces. You might impress people with your image, but heaven is looking at your outcome. The Spirit is inspecting your harvest. We live in a culture obsessed with appearance. It's easier than ever to package a persona, to curate an online image, to filter your flaws and amplify your strengths. But fruit can't be faked. You can't edit into existence. You can't manipulate it with marketing. Fruit shows up where there's been obedience, discipline, and hidden development. It doesn't grow in spotlight, it grows in soil. And many people want the stage without the soil. They want the reward without the root system. They want to go viral without going deep. But shallow roots lead to short seasons. Without depth, the storm will take you out. Without fruit, your platform will collapse under pressure. Gifts might get you in the room, but fruit is what keeps the door open. It's what makes you trustworthy. It's what multiplies. Real fruit reproduces. They see the strength of the spiritual fruit is not just about external success. It's about internal evidence. It's about love when it's hard to love. Joy when circumstances say you shouldn't have any. Peace that passes understanding. Patience that endures seasons of delay. Kindness when you feel attacked. Goodness when the world is dark. Faithfulness when no one is watching. Gentleness when you want to snap. Self-control when temptation is loud. They see the strength of these aren't things you can fake for long. They're either in you or they're not. They grow when you abide in him. That's what Jesus said in John 15. If you abide in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Not if you hustle hard or if you impress people, if you abide. That's the secret. That's the system of the kingdom. The branch doesn't produce fruit on its own. It produces what the vine provides. It's not about striving. It's about staying connected. Too many people are performing when they should be planting. They're producing content instead of cultivating character. They're more concerned with fruitfulness on stage than faithfulness in private. But what you do when no one is watching determines what will happen when everyone is. God doesn't reward hype. He rewards health, and healthy roots produce healthy fruit. There's no shortcut to fruit. You can't microwave spiritual maturity. You have to water it daily. You have to fight off the weeds of pride and fear and envy. You have to prune what's not serving your growth, and you have to wait. Fruit comes in season. You might not see results immediately, but if the roots are right, the fruit will come. Many people are building a name when they should be building a life. They want the benefits of being anointed without the burden of being processed. But anointing without fruit is dangerous. It creates influence without integrity. It builds platforms without foundations. That's why God is more concerned with your development than your delivery. He'd rather you be a tree planted by the rivers of water than a weed growing in shallow soil. He wants you to be the kind of person who produces fruit in and out of season, who is consistent no matter the climate, who is rooted so deep in his word and presence that storms don't shake you and success doesn't change you, because the fruit is not for you, it's for others. Your fruit feeds your family, it nourishes your community. It confirms your calling. When people taste your life, do they experience sweetness or bitterness? Do they feel peace or confusion? Do they see humility or pride? Do they sense freedom or bondage? Because real fruit will always reflect the nature of the tree. If you're rooted in Christ, your fruit will reflect Christ. If you're rooted in offense, your fruit will reflect offense. If you're rooted in fear, your fruit will reflect anxiety. That's why you've got to check your root system before you chase visibility. You've got to ask yourself, what am I really connected to? Are you rooted in the word or rooted in the world? Are you abiding in truth or addicted to attention? You producing for the kingdom or performing for claps? Fruit doesn't lie. It doesn't need to announce itself. An apple tree doesn't shoot. Hey, look at me. I'm fruitful. It just grows. It just shows up. The fruit is the announcement. The harvest is the testimony. And when you carry real fruit, you don't have to convince anyone. You just keep producing. The results speak. Transformation speaks. Consistency speaks. Real fruit draws people without manipulation. It changes atmospheres. It glorifies God. Jesus said, this is how my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit. Not just that you speak well, not just that you build big, that you live in such a way that heaven gets glory from your harvest. You don't need to chase validation when you carry fruit. You don't need to defend your worth when you have evidence. Fruit settles the debate. It proves God is working in you. It reveals your maturity. It confirms your identity. You won't have to argue about your anointing. You won't have to explain your calling. Just keep planting, keep abiding, because in due time, what's in you will show up through you.